For Sunday, January 25th, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda this Sunday, Governor Deal reveals the big budget and takes a mystery trip. The former Atlanta fire chief files a complaint with the feds over his dismissal, and there's talk of another trolley, this one in Marietta. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us this fine Sunday. We're going to start out on a little bit of a lighter note because stories like this don't come along all the time, and we'll call it the case of the missing governor. But before I turn to that, I want to introduce Megan Hansen, who is our powerful attorney with a conservative bent. Glad you're here, Megan. Thank you. Phil, I turn to you because the governor was off the books for about 3 days last week. Maybe it was 4 days. He wasn't at the Martin Luther King observation at the Capitol, though he had done the statue thing before that. And his office refused to say where he was. And it was kind of fun. The Capitol reporters were scrambling.
Well, that's right. And of course, social media just blew up over those last few days. And there were some comparisons to the missing South Carolina governor of a few years ago and on and on. But it was a sensitive trade mission. And as we tape, some of the word has leaked out that he was over in Great Britain.
Yeah, and we do a lot of business with Great Britain, that being our second or third largest trading partner. I know Canada's first. I think Britain might be second or third. But it was funny. They even reached out to the former press secretary of that South Carolina governor, who said, "No, I do not know where Governor Deal is." I thought that was, so we know the governor was not on the Appalachian Trail, and he's back.
Or in South America.
Or in South America.
Yes.
Now, he's got no Argentinian firecrackers so far as we know. Anyway, it was just fun. So the governor comes back, he finds out the AJC has beaten up his daughter-in-law for her share of her fundraising,
Yes.
yeah, and her cut of all that swag. And I didn't think 10% was a
It's kind of the industry standard.
That's a normal,
and there's nothing that
1%.
says that you can't hire a family member, especially when they're obviously qualified for the job, and she is.
And you do
Yeah.
a good job, you make a lot of money. That's just how America works. This
That's
is not, you know.
Democrats
right,
do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a foreign concept.
Well, and again, 10%. If I went out for my newspaper to hire a freelance salesperson, I'd be paying 15% commission.
Yeah.
So I don't see the big deal, but the budget is a big deal, and let's look at that. There is money to be spent for the first time in a long time. Remember, and I make this point over and over. The Republican leadership in this state cut the state budget by $4 billion to get us through Obama's recession. $4
Bush's
billion
recession.
in
Yes, sir.
actual cuts. Pretty remarkable. So now they've got some money to spend. He's proposing $250 million more for schools, $800 million in construction. So far, so good. Now we learn that part of that construction money includes some $23 million for a new parking deck for the Falcons and the World Congress Center. What do you think, Phil?
Well, that's right, and there may be even more expenditures, and there's a lot of criticism, as there should be, about should taxpayers in Augusta and Valdosta and Columbus be paying for what maybe Arthur Blank ought to be paying for.
Absolutely, they should, because it's the Georgia World Congress Center, and it is enjoyed by all Georgians and folks from all over the nation and the world, actually. You got how many games, home games? Eight home games?
Yeah, 8
and the
plus
rest of the
preseason.
time, that facility is used for other things.
I agree.
And it clearly benefits Georgia World Congress Center, and the state ought to be paying for it.
And there's talk of a new convention hotel there, too, on the side
That's
of the
on the side of
current
the old- on the side of
current
the old-
Georgia
Now,
Dome.
I think that would be a good thing there, and that would be a draw. You need a hotel in that area, and it would be a lease
And
operation.
that's right, and they would be partnering with the states. They wouldn't run that hotel. They'd get somebody in who knows how to do that.
And these are construction jobs and hotel jobs and, you know, other third-party jobs that will be Georgians.
Absolutely. I don't have a problem with it at all. Generally, when the budget is announced, the complainers begin. But we haven't really seen much of that this time. The budget's been out for a week to 10 days. And the only complaints I've seen come from those who work on behalf of 11,500 part-time school employees, bus drivers, cafeteria workers. These are part-time employees. The state provides their health insurance. And the state has been trying to shed that responsibility for a number of years. And I tend to agree with that. That seems to me to be a local matter. Jeff, don't you think it's local?
You know,
I can
I
see it's
mean,
going to
we're-
squeeze the
we're-
local school board, but
Not only does it squeeze the local school, but well, it squeezes these 11,500 people who currently have health insurance and aren't anymore in a state that won't expand Medicaid under Obamacare. That to me is unconscionable. If we had expanded Medicaid under Obamacare, and they had that option, they had that vehicle for health insurance, we'd have been in a better place, and I think that it would have been a justifiable move. In the absence of that, it seems to me hard-hearted.
can't they go on the
As you
healthcare
know-
marketplace?
Well, Jeff, we've argued this before. The expense of getting into Obamacare and expanding Medicaid is billions of dollars over the next 10 years, and we cannot afford that, period, end of discussion.
No, we can afford it, and it makes no sense not to. It's a $3 billion investment for a $30 billion return in federal dollars, and all of the jobs that would accrue.
But there's strings attached to those $30 billion.
There's
And they're
strings attached to
temporary.
the.
The
There are
funds are
strings.
temporary.
There are strings attached to the transportation dollars we get from Washington. There are strings attached to every dollar we get
Which is
from
exactly
Washington.
why we
Megyn.
don't need to have something else with strings attached. We need to limit our strings to the
You
federal
know, I think
government.
that y'all are just 10 years behind on this issue. And everybody's going to come around, and the Georgia General Assembly, ultimately, just like it did on civil rights and Social Security and every other progressive movement
that's
in this country,
ridiculous.
is going to come around on Obamacare and extending health care to everybody. They will, Phil.
You just
they
think-
will. You might be in your grave because we're always slower than everybody else.
Now, let's talk about the real
But they
issue.
will come around.
You think that money grows on trees? It's
No,
the
I don't think
typical,
that money
typical
grows on
liberal
trees.
argument.
I think that we are in a state where we have we're making some progress over time, and we're always behind the curve.
Hey, Megan.
In Georgia.
You have to understand, Jeff thinks free community college is free. He believes that.
Free community college
Yeah,
is free.
he believes
No,
free
it
community
costs.
college is free.
It costs,
All right,
but
but
it's progress.
Let's turn to the bigger issue at the General Assembly and the state capitol, and that is transportation funds. That's the big one. And Megan, I'm going to put you on the spot with this. What do you think they're likely to do? They're not. It's all behind closed doors right now.
Right. Well, you know, I'll tell you what I expect them to do, and that's leaders lead. And it's time to make tough decisions, and people might not like it, but we've got to do something about the transportation problem. You look all over social media, and people are constantly talking about, you know, what are we going to do to fix transportation, to fix the fact that I have an hour-and-a-half commute to work. So that's, you know, keeping us from growing, but also keeping business from coming here. And if we really are going to continue to be a state that's focused on business, we have to answer the transportation problem.
Well, I sense that the one of the proposals, the 1 cent statewide sales tax, is not being well received, especially, Jeff, for guys like you and me, and for you too, Phil, in Fulton and DeKalb, where we're already paying a 1 cent sales tax for MARTA. So I don't think that one's going to go. And Phil, you and I were in a long discussion over lunch this week about how the gas taxes work. Would you like to explain
Right.
that?
Well, let me just say this. It'd take 5 minutes to go through the complicated formula.
Don't do the whole thing.
No, I
Don't do
won't.
it.
But let me go back to the political aspect of this that Megan was addressing too, and we've talked about. And I talked to Majority Leader Larry O'Neill of the House of Representatives, and he was asked directly what you just asked, and he says, "I have no idea what the caucus is going to do," and neither did Senate Majority Leader Bill Cowser. And so the polling, you know, I told you about the Insider Advantage poll 2 weeks ago. People do not want a gas tax hike. They don't want a sales tax hike. The only hope might be if you had an offsetting cut in the income tax.
Well, another poll
with
from
that.
another company said that opposition to transportation taxes went down if there were offsets, such as a cut in the income tax or something like that. And I still think, and we're not going to get into it here, but based on our lunch, I still think there's wiggle room in the gas tax, ways to fix it.
Well,
There is.
you know, you're right. It is very complicated. But the fact of the matter is that it hasn't been raised in 44 years, and we've had obviously an awful lot of changes in the way we use our roads and build our roads over that period of time, over the last 4.5 decades. I agree with Megan. I think that it requires leadership, and we've got leaders saying they don't have any idea, not a clue of what they're going to do. That's a problem. They ought to, because
Well,
it
they have a
requires
roadmap.
what the commission shows is that it requires requires funding. It requires money, and they have to have the courage to raise the funds.
And
it's just that simple.
as a Democrat, or someone who supports the Democrats, it's a lot easier for a Democrat to say that because they're not the ones taking the big risk right now. It would be Republicans, and we're also the ones who always say we can't, raise taxes. So we are going to have to do something. We are going to have to get creative. Maybe it's not raise taxes. Maybe it's take cuts from other places. But yes, we will have to address it.
And Megan, the creativity too comes from, and I know you agree with this, as the public-private partnerships. I'm going to keep harping on
Yes,
that.
those are
We are
great.
way behind other states
We
like
gotta get
Texas
out.
and Florida. Tolling will be the answer on new roads. It's a source of
they
revenue.
won't generate $1 billion a year.
It will help.
It
Yes,
will help, yeah,
it will.
but you're right. All right, when we come back, we're either going to talk about what other issues are before the legislature, or we're going to talk local news around the area. I'll have to make an executive decision in just a minute.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
Okay, before we get to local issues, let's very quickly point out that the medical marijuana bill is one bill of the state capitol that does appear to be moving, and there is new talk of the water wars. Governor Deal has appointed some high-powered people to negotiate with Florida, and State Representative Harry Geiser continues to push for water from the Tennessee River, which I think is perfectly valid, and
That's our
has
water.
constitutional. It's our water.
It is our water.
And we have constitutional precedent for that.
Well, that's right. There's
How's
a
it our water?
lawsuit.
How is it our water?
There's a
A
lawsuit.
mistake was made.
That's
in the
right. It was a
surveyor.
surveying mistake.
Really?
Yes.
How
I
old
want
is
you to
that
look at
mistake?
Google that.
How old is that mistake?
It goes back to the 18th century. but it's
But-
still valid in a
but-
court of law. Let me mention a couple.
Subsequently, though, the Supreme Court upheld that right.
I
in
think that when
other
you go over there to get
disputes.
that water, you better take your bayonets with you.
I agree with you. I agree with you. A couple quick things before we leave the legislature, though, that viewers ought to be looking for. There was a Education Reform Commission that the governor did name. Chuck Knapp, the former UGA president, is the head of that. They're going to give some ideas for the next session, not this year, but next year, which is a little bit of disappointment. And, there's that autism bill is
But you know
coming
what? You
up.
couldn't do transportation and education in the same session.
I disagree with you. I think you could. I think you could. That's
All
what
right,
we
go
pay
ahead.
these people to do. The autism bill, you remember when they tacked that on to the medical marijuana oil bill?
Yes.
That
Oil.
tanked the whole thing? That is going to be back. And the religious liberty bill that we've been arguing about over the last few weeks, Larry O'Neill told me there will be a House floor vote on that bill, and even the governor seems to be sympathetic to it now.
All right, let's turn to some local news. Atlanta City Councilman Michael Julian Bond. I tell you, it makes me feel my age that Michael Julian Bond is middle-aged. His father, Julian Bond, who's a contemporary, was here in the last
remember him,
week.
yeah, absolutely.
It's just amazing. But the City Ethics Board came down hard on Michael Julian Bond, and I think it raises some serious questions about his behavior. He's accused of using his discretionary council expenses to pay for a class reunion in Washington, trips for was it a fraternity or sorority or something, clearly misusing city funds. And I go back to another of my favorite points. All of these county commissioners and city councilmen have too much in their discretionary accounts.
Well, I agree with you.
But he got fined, what,
$15,000.
$15,000?
Yeah, he had to pay restitution.
Have to pay restitution
I think
and
District
pay-
Attorney
and
Paul
fine.
Howard is looking at
Well,
some
I wonder
criminal
that.
charges.
Does this cross, Megan, does this cross over into the border with criminal misbehavior?
I think that would be something that the district attorney should look into for sure. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and give you my legal opinion, but I think that this is something that definitely constitutes, investigating his behavior further and seeing if he has
Like fraud.
fraud.
And then this week, also, the spokesman for the police union went before the Atlanta City Council and really got after Mayor Kasim Reed for a photo op he did in which he did the hands up, don't shoot thing, which we know is totally invalid, never happened. And
It didn't happen.
No.
It doesn't happen to black men in America.
Didn't happen
That you
in
got your
Ferguson.
hands up and you get shot.
It didn't.
Have you seen Selma?
It didn't happen in.
Have you seen Selma? The movie?
No.
Half
No?
of that is
What is
fiction.
that?
Half of it is
Half
fiction.
of it is fiction.
Yeah, that's-
Selma
it's
is
been
fiction.
it's been
the Edmund
criticized.
Pettus Bridge.
No, that's real.
What about the Holocaust, Phil? Did that happen?
Go back to what he said about Ferguson. That never
But the point
happened.
is, the mayor should not be dissing his own policeman by
He
doing
did
that.
not diss anybody by putting his hands up. This was a national movement that said, don't shoot me. I'm innocent. I haven't done anything wrong. I've got my hands up now. Don't shoot. It's just that simple.
The gentle
time after time after time, we have seen what police and our society places on the value of black lives.
If you wanna-
and
if you
black
wanna
people
equate-
are tired of it. And if the mayor of the city of Atlanta wants to have a photograph with some comedians and rappers with their hands up,
So you don't
I don't
trust-
want him
I
even
think
with
that he's
rappers.
perfectly
I don't want
fine.
him
So
anywhere
why
near
don't we do
rappers.
something that's not disingenuous, like actually make policy decisions towards fixing that, as opposed to taking a very convenient picture with celebrities and it having other consequences. I mean,
I don't know of anybody who's complained about this other than the police, and even his complaint was qualified. He was stating, for instance, that he acknowledges the support that he's had from the mayor for the police
So
department.
you're saying you
wait,
seem to
Jeff.
be anti-police, and you think
I'm
that
not one bit anti-police.
here's my
I'm
point.
anti-shooting people down in the middle of the street.
Here's my
That's
point.
what I'm anti.
well, we're
my
all
point.
against that. Come on.
Well, here's my point. The Gentle Giant robbed a store, roughed up a storekeeper, and then attacked a policeman. He's dead. That's sad. Too bad. But the point is, we can't use this symbol of hands up, don't shoot
We
for
can
Michael
use
Brown
this
in
symbol.
Ferguson, Missouri.
We can use that symbol
And here's
because
the-
it
here's the
happens
other
time
point.
and again, and folks are tired of it, and it needs to stop. It just needs to stop.
There were 363 killings of blacks in the last year by people with uniforms. That's a good month for Chicago.
Can we also stop?
Let me tell you
Can we
what.
also stop the black crime rate
You
that
know,
is up?
the thing about comparing police shootings to the black crime rate is it's the only time conservatives ever show any concern for the black crime rate.
we got to get
Number
out.
one. Number two is to talk about black on black crime, it's identical to white on white crime. To say that most black people were killed by blacks is the identical thing as saying most whites are killed by whites.
blacks are 12% of the population.
Both of which are absolutely true.
We got to get out.
and none of which are addressed by a mayor putting his hands up in a photo with comedians.
No, what is addressed by that is support
gotta get out.
for not shooting people in the middle of the street. That's what's that's great symbolism from the mayor and great support for that cause. And we all should have our hands
Mark my
up
words.
and say, "Don't shoot."
Mark my words.
And go see Selma.
The-
And go see some of the history that's led up to where we are today. Because by
I lived through that
2015,
era. I don't
we
have to go see
figured
it.
that we should have made some progress.
By the way, President Lyndon Johnson was disrespected. Whether you agreed with him or not, they never gave him proper credit
We
for
got to
what
get
happened.
out. But I want to make this point about the Kasim photo, the photo op, the hands up, don't shoot. In 3 or 4 years, Kasim Reed is likely to be running statewide for governor, senator, something in the state of Georgia. That photograph will be everywhere. It was a
and
political
so will his support for the Georgia
mistake. It was a bad political mistake.
So will his support for
by
the
Kasim Reed.
port in Georgia and dredging that port so that we can have those super tankers down there. That too will be part of his.
And his attack on the Christian
gotta get out.
the fire chief.
When
will
we
be part of
come
his
back,
record.
as I talk over my colleagues, we're going to tell you a tale of two trolleys. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
And as we mentioned, the fire chief in the city of Atlanta, Kelvin Cochran, has taken his grievance with the city to the federal discrimination system. That's a system that's larger than the GPD, the gross economic product of most states.
It's an Equal Employment
So-
Opportunity Commission complaint about religious discrimination.
So it will be lost in bureaucracy for as far as the eye can see. That's what they do. They lose things in the bureaucracy. But very interesting that Kasim Reed, who is refusing to pay what the city owes to the Board of Education, now is in a dust-up with AT&T over them moving their utility lines for the trolley downtown. What do you make of this?
Well, that's right. You know, the streets were torn up, and AT&T is saying, wait a minute, we're on the hook for millions of dollars. I really hate it. I think we've all agreed that we appreciate MARTA and its new leadership. They're in the middle. They're the conduit for the money, so they're going to be the target of this lawsuit. I think the city, I've talked to several lawyers, I think the city is on the hook for this money.
I think a lot of people who pay their AT&T cell phone bills every every month they're thinking, you know, why can't they do something nice for the city of Atlanta? It's only $5.4 million.
But Kasim just, Megan, Kasim, you haven't been with us in a while, but you've watched. Kasim just seems to love a fight. If he doesn't have a fight going, I don't think he's happy.
All publicity is good publicity, right?
I guess maybe that's the operative idea there. I don't know. Now, in the meantime, Phil and I were with some folks this week who think that this business of a trolley in Marietta might have legs. It might be real. It's not just Mayor Steve Tumlin, Thunder Tumlin, talking about stuff. He actually might do it. You
Well-
surprised at that?
Well, no, and I think, you know, Thunder Tumblin has a great proposal. He rolled it out before the city council. You know, they do have a trolley around the Marietta Square already, and so he wants to expand it, especially with the Braves coming there.
Connected down to where the new Braves Stadium is. So but what I'm interested in that idea is that this would be a northern outpost to get to the stadium. You know, as opposed to all of us, we're focused on 285 and 75.
Does the trolley go to the stadium? Is that the proposal?
That's the proposal, is to run it down to the stadium. Have big parking lots, and then that siphons some business over to the square in
And the
Marietta.
trolley holds how many people?
Huh?
The
What?
trolley holds.
I don't think they've established
They
what,
haven't. They're
what
not
the
that
system
far
would
along.
be exactly. They're just the vote was to explore the how and the what, when, and where.
Okay.
But now, you know, the
I
Atlanta
understand the
trolleys
trolley's
hold
on a-
200 homeless.
I'm sorry?
The Atlanta trolleys can hold as many as 200 homeless
Well, I think
And
that would
passengers.
be people.
and passengers.
Yeah. So we would be counting people, right?
Right.
And it's on a rail, but a trolley on wheels would probably hold maybe 50,
70 at the most.
70 at
You
the
like the
most.
wheels on the
And the
trolley.
number of people who go to a Braves game is probably in like the tens of thousands.
Well, they might have more than one. I mean, it was more of like a bus. It was more like
There's
a bus.
more than
I'm not
versus
knocking the
yeah.
idea.
one.
I'm
There's
not
more
knocking
than
the
one.
idea. I was in
Yeah.
Charleston this weekend. They have a free trolley that goes all over the place. It's on wheels. It was terrific.
2 counties this week passed budgets. I always like to keep score. Gwinnett County passed a level budget, no tax increase. Fulton County, which I thought was going to raise taxes. Did I lose track of something there? But they're not raising taxes.
Well, let me tell you, Fulton County passed their budget unanimously, which is a shocker. Both the right and the left on the commission voted for it. However, they ended up with a surplus, which I did the math
Really?
the other day. Yeah, Fulton County ended up with a surplus, so there's no need to have that illegal tax increase last year.
The 17% tax increase.
Yeah.
Now, isn't that still being litigated, whether or
It is
not
being
it's actually
litigated.
illegal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but who's litigating it? I thought it was just talk. I didn't know
Remember
anybody
the,
was actually
remember the
litigating
plaintiffs
it.
were several representatives of the Fulton County legislative delegation.
I
So that's
can't-
still pending.
I can't let this next story go. This is Georgia. It's not Illinois or Massachusetts. Co-ed dorms at Georgia State. Are we ready for that?
And again, I mean, you know, it's 2015, it's Georgia. We're typically about 25 years behind the rest of the nation on anything progressive.
Let's
so
see what Megan
probably,
thinks.
I think maybe
thinks.
so. Go on,
Megan's
Megan.
the youngest. What do you think?
Come on.
I mean, I think it's a little weird, but I guess people should be able to pick their roommates. I mean, if it doesn't hurt anybody, then that's fine. But you know, I think they're very particular about the opt-in, and you know, only a certain dorm will have this, or only certain floors. I wouldn't choose, a roommate from the opposite sex.
They even
but-
suggested that brothers and sisters might want to live together, and I thought that kind of strange. I wouldn't want to live with
I
my
think it could
sister.
be a recipe for problems.
All right. When we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for this week's winners and losers.
I'm declaring a unanimous winner. The Atlanta Hawks going into Friday night's game against Oklahoma City were looking for their 15th win in a row, and they had won 28 out of 30. Wow, second best record in the league. And Jeff, I turn to you. Winners and losers.
I'm not going to let you steal my winner. The Atlanta Hawks are on a roll. They're playing terrific ball. They don't have a star on the court, but they're passing the ball, and they are playing just terrific, terrific basketball.
Do you have a
winner?
loser?
The winner again, there's another winner, and that's Barack Obama, who delivered the State of the Union address, and was it ever terrific. I mean, you know, he really got past the politics to the principle of governing and lectured his Republican friends and some Democrats as well on what are we here for? We're here to do the job of the American people, and instead we get caught up in all of our little petty games playing.
Okay.
That to
Hurry
me
up.
was the best part of the speech, despite the fact that he talked about free community college, you know, and closing this wealth gap.
Come on, we
Phil,
gotta get
that
out.
really threatens our democracy.
Yeah, he's destroyed the middle class, and now he wants to
Oh
help
my
it.
goodness, it was
All right,
Bush
Go
who
ahead.
destroyed
Megan is next.
the
Megan
middle
is
class.
next.
Well, I'm going to echo Jeff on the winners, and I agree that it's the Hawks. We finally have a team that we can root for here in Georgia.
Absolutely.
And I really hate to do this, but my loser this week is Representative or Congresswoman Renee Elmers of North Carolina, and it's more based on the confusion and the upset with the 20-week abortion ban, that they just kind of pulled that bill at the last minute because of some really unjustifiable reasons that I disagree with wholeheartedly.
Well, it was Republican chaos in their first big
Right.
measure, too. Phil, quickly.
Real quick, there was a winner. We lost a great carpet giant over in Dalton, Bud Shaw, and also my winner is upping those speed limits on the interstates, and my loser, of course, is Obama's State of Delusion speech.
State of Delusion speech. That's good. All right. I really don't have anything more except Russ Spencer of Fox 5 News did a heck of a story this week on this new Jesuit high school, Cristo Rey, in the city of Atlanta. An interesting concept, one that bears watching. We'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing on today's program.